Somewhere between accepting this is just the way it is and adding another medication, Kelley Jensen asked a different question. What else is available? Her autistic son, Beau, was 22 years old and struggling with OCD, anxiety, and rigidity that had become completely unsustainable for their family. Kelley was not looking for a miracle. She was looking for another tool. That search led her to transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, and a personalized protocol known as MERT. It was drug-free, it was non-invasive, and although Kelley understood that the outcome was not guaranteed, the changes she observed afterward altered the direction of their lives. In this episode, Kelley shares how Beau's OCD began to ease, how his communication started to expand, and how he moved toward greater connection, confidence, and independence, including building a relationship with his sister that they had never been able to have before. Today, Beau is 26 and living in a supported apartment. But this episode is it's about far more than the treatment of one family. We're talking about brain care, autism, parenting, emotional regulation, neuroplasticity, and why progress does not stop simply because childhood does. We get into the tools that families build over years, the pause buttons, direct language, healthy boundaries, and big problem, small problem conversations that may appear not to be working until one day they finally land. Kelley also shares why don't compare, don't compete became the mantra that carried her through motherhood, and why progress is sometimes better measured in inch stones than milestones. We talk about the creation of brain performance technologies, the history behind her Refrigerator Moms podcast, and why she has made it her mission to tell families and clinicians about a treatment she believes far too few people understand. And because this is still unbreakable, we eventually debate Morgan Freeman versus James Earl Jones, the only acceptable way to cut a sandwich, dishwasher politics, Golden Girls, and how to Shawshank a microwave out of your garage. This is a conversation about motherhood, mental health, and what becomes possible when somebody refuses to stop asking better questions. Let's get into it. And welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Unbreakable Podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Kelley Jensen, who is the podcast host of Refrigerator Moms and does so much more in the community than you can even wrap your arms around. Kelley, hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so happy. We're just delighted to have you. You do some really interesting work, and I think I'd like to just dive in and talk a little bit about your work, do a little bit of an introduction for our listeners, and then we'll just jump into the conversation.
Sure. Thank you. So we were talking before we started recording, and I told you about my 26-year-old autistic son, who is, severely autistic, a really gregarious and wonderful person. But like so many people who are living with autism, he can be very rigid, and he was developing a hoarding problem as a result of comorbidity of OCD. When he was about 22, it was unsustainable. So I said, there's got to be something other than medication, because I have him on all of the medication that's been recommended to me over the years. Well, what else can we do? What treatments are available for OCD? And I learned that transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, is FDA cleared for OCD. And I said, well, what is this? And why haven't I ever heard of it? And I learned of a version of TMS called MERT, magnetic e-resonance therapy, that is popular in the autistic community. And I said, well, that's it. I have to do it. It's drug-free. It's non-invasive. It may not help him, but it's not going to hurt him. So we're doing it. And
Beautiful.
He got a life-changing results. It alleviated his OCD probably about week 4. The treatment itself is 5 days a week for 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. And probably about week 4, we had a noticeable relief of OCD, and the results kept coming, and they peaked probably about 8 months after the treatment was over. And I am now a mom on a mission to talk about TMS or MERT in any of its protocols through a company that I started called Brain Performance Technologies. That is a medical service organization, meaning that it helps doctors put TMS in their practices. So that is my journey. I want everybody to know about TMS, because it's not just something that's available for autistic people. It's available for anyone who wants better mental health.
Oh, that's an interesting point. So, talk a little bit about when you think about the people who walk through your door who are let's place our autistic families on pause for a second, and
Okay.
let's talk to those people who maybe have been dealing with depression or anxiety or
Sure.
in this case OCD.
So depression enjoys the most insurance coverage. It is TMS was developed in the 80s in Scandinavia, believe it or not. It was
Hmm.
FDA approved in 2008 as a treatment for depression, and it had full integration into most health plans by 2012. And it's just that it's underutilized by people who prescribe medications or therapies for depression. It's unfortunately only prescribed by about 1% of all of the doctors here in the States. So it is not experimental. It is not alternative. It is available to anyone who is struggling with depression as part of their insurance. That said, it is also received FDA clearance for OCD, which is how I found it, anxious depression, smoking cessation, believe it or not, and migraines. And just this year, I'm very excited to tell everybody that it is a version of it. This is the version I did for my son Mert, has been FDA cleared for PTSD. It's going to be the first new medical intervention for PTSD in over 25 years. So it's quite exciting and
Powerful.
well deserved for people that struggle with PTSD.
Truly. And so, is there, like, when I think about something like Veterans Affairs, I have a service member in my family who served overseas, went to Afghanistan. I have another one who was in Yugoslavia in 1994. That was a terrible, terrible time to be there.
Uh-huh.
When you think about the possibilities and the capabilities, do you have any partnerships or any intend to partner or educate, like our Veterans Affairs type of organizations?
All day, every day. I pound the pavement like only the mother of an autistic child can pound the pavement. We are a TRICARE appointed, so people who have TRICARE that have a diagnosis of depression can already access our services. And we actually have 3 locations: one in San Jose, one in Sacramento, and one in Las Vegas. And our Las Vegas and our Sacramento location are very close to Air Force bases, and so we do outreach to on base outreach. Clinician outreach all the time, and I'm looking to do more. And if anybody out there is listening, find me and let's get you education. And it's just, yes, it's all about telling people. It's all about coming on podcasts like yours and telling people about this.
Yeah. So that's the interesting thing that I was thinking. The first thing I thought was, why aren't we screaming from the rooftops to do this? Is this because perhaps pills are a more lucrative path? Like when you think about the fact, like I know my autistic nephew, he's on several medications and he does not like them. And he was a young one who would take them. He was kind of like a prisoner. He would take them,
Yeah.
and if you didn't say lift your tongue and show me that you actually took them, they probably weren't going down his throat.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that my son, he was taking 4 different classes of drugs, and I went to all the fancy doctors. And at one point, I said to the doctor at UCSF, "Is the point to keep him stoned? Is that what we're doing?" And they told me that is the cocktail, and that as he gets older, they won't be as necessary. And it really wasn't until he did the course of Mert that we were able to drop those medications. He's now down to 2 classes of drugs,
Wow.
at a half the dose that he was on before, and they're working better. So I mean, I'm thrilled because medication is always going to be a part of the equation for people who
Always.
struggle with mental health. But the idea and the goal is to minimize the amount of medication that you need and make the amount of medication that you take work as efficiently and effectively as it can, right? So brain stimulation therapies, MERT, TMS can really help doing that. And why it hasn't caught on, you know, the great companies that develop these technologies, they don't have the marketing arm, I think, that the
Hmm.
pharmaceutical companies have. There's no money for commercials. There's no
Yeah.
money for, you can't just send a group of cute little reps to doctor's office with a sample pack. It's a big machine, and they're expensive. They're capital intensive, and that's not as easy as writing a prescription. And it's easy to be cynical, but what other explanation is there?
Yeah, I mean, the structure of how you would deliver it would matter. And, so then the question I also have to that end, and when we think about the applicability of it, is what about somebody who's neurodivergent in terms of like ADHD? Is this something that would work in that case to help somebody kind of
Yeah,
move in a different direction and come off
sure. So,
medication, perhaps?
sure. So it is not FDA cleared for ADHD. It is pretty well studied, but it's something that you wouldn't get insurance coverage for. However, many teens that are neurodivergent that have a diagnosis of ADHD as they age, so TMS is covered by insurance for those diagnosed with depression ages 15 and up that have failed to make progress on
Hmm.
medications. So at 15, perhaps depression has set in because for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
neurodivergent children and teens, it quite often does set in. And so a lot of times in our clinic, we see kids that they have an ADHD diagnosis and a depression diagnosis, and
Right.
they're there for the depression, but it does help the ADHD.
I would imagine. And then you would also think, like, for example, we saw a rash, I would say probably 4 or 5 years ago, where we were seeing these medications for mental health or mental illness, I guess is really how I would classify it.
Yeah,
We're putting these young people on medications. And one of the highest risks for anybody in an adolescent group is suicidal ideation and suicide in terms of how their body and their hormones and that growth is actually happening.
yeah.
So, I mean, like you,
Yes. And there are, since I've been doing this in the short 3 years that I have been doing this, they have had more accelerated protocols come onto the market. Stanford has developed one that is a 5-day protocol. So it's almost like an intensive outpatient. You do the treatment 10 times a day for 5 days, 50
whoa,
sessions. It's very intense, but it is the most effective treatment for suicidal ideation or people who have had suicide attempts that you can do, much more effective than medication. So I always encourage people to do some research and look into it because it is new and emerging. The accelerated protocols are new and emerging, but they're very important because again, they're very intense for more intense psychiatric conditions. And also people have to travel oftentimes because it might not be available in the area of the world that they live in. So accelerated protocols that you can do that are all gaining clearance rapidly are important part of being able to travel, right? You can take a week off
hmm,
work to do treatment kind of a thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, where is this technology in other aspects of the world? Like recognizing that Unbreakable has a global audience, is this technology available in other areas?
Well, like I said, it was developed in Scandinavia. So
Hmm.
there's about four manufacturers of the equipment, and they're all uh, you know in uh, in Scandinavia for the most part. So it's
Hmm.
widely available there. It is peppered all around the world, so that you can probably find access to a clinic all over the world, but probably not as widely available as it would
Hmm.
be in the States. It is available in Canada. It is definitely available in the States, and it's definitely available in Europe. And Australia actually has a pretty decent smattering of TMS clinics.
That doesn't surprise me. Australia tends to be ahead of the curve when it comes to mental illness and
Yeah.
really helping people flourish. I mean,
And they are into alternatives to medication, right?
Very much so, very much
Yeah.
so. And so let's switch gears a little bit. I want to hear, about the outcomes. I'm an outcome-based person. I love hearing the stories. And I think when I think about what your son has experienced and what he's gone through, I would love to hear how that impact has been for his quality of life in terms of him maturing as an adult. But then after that, I would really love to hear about what that's done for your other son, for you, for your husband, in terms of seeing him,
Yeah.
grow as a
Sure.
person.
So it's my daughter. My other
Oh,
child is a girl, and
oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
that's okay. I mean, she's thrilled. They have a great. He calls her every day, and they talk every
Oh,
day. And it tickles her pink that and it was the kind of thing when they were growing up where they didn't really have much of a relationship. She was
oh,
they're just 17 months apart, but he was sort of in his own world. He always had a little bit of language, but never really enough to have great conversations with her. But now, they are thick as thieves, and so that is something that is a great relief to me because
yeah.
what happens when I'm gone is the question all parents of autistic people struggle with and keep us up. What happens if I'm gone? What happens if I'm gone? Um,
Yeah.
he did. I did not do the treatment to get a bump in his language. Would have never dreamed that would have worked
No.
at 22 years old, and I would have. He had enough language for me not to be greedy. We used to say, right? He could tell me where it hurt, and he could, we had like a little shorthand for language, but his language did blossom, and I think it's because he was just so much less anxious, so he could
Mm.
process the language that he did have. He wouldn't kind of go white like he used to when he was just chock full of anxiety. And language begets language. So the more that you talk and the more impact
Yeah.
your words have, the more you want to talk. And so better communication continues to blossom for him. And that is really obviously amazing. Um,
Yeah.
he moved into an apartment in October
Oh.
here, which was, I mean, obviously, he's always going to be severely autistic. That is his label, and that will not change. And he does have caregivers, but the fact that he could do it is a partial answer. It starts the framework for the answer to the question, what happens when I'm gone, right?
Absolutely.
So 26 years old, living in an apartment, that is something that definitely was not possible when he was 22 and shoving bags in the car just to go to the grocery store.
Well, not only that, but I think that what it also does is it builds that self-confidence. And what I tend to find with people is like I work with Special Olympians in my spare time. I've got a little golfer, and she's just wonderful. And if you're watching, shout out to you, little miss. She loves a good shout out. But what I find is it's a very interesting societal kind of behavior or culture where we talk slower and
Yeah,
louder, and we just don't like, there's just no normal interaction to
yeah,
support somebody and actually just treat them like a human. Do you
right.
find that?
Well, yeah, I will say that probably one of the most lovely things about him doing treatment is that the grocery store didn't stop being about the stuff. It stopped being about the three items he could pick for his snacks, and loading the cart with the stuff in the aisles, and it started more being about a community outing. He had to go to say hi to the gals in the bakery and the gals in the deli, and then he would always stop by, and he remembers everybody's name. He's one of those people with those incredible memories, and every butcher's name, and so it became a community event, and that's lovely, right? Because
Yeah.
that is that's what builds confidence, is everybody
Yeah.
knowing your name and you knowing everybody else's name, and it not being about how many yogurts you're going to get, right? Which is what it was
Yeah.
about.
Well,
So
and you
that's
think about
lovely.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs is,
Yeah,
food, shelter, safety, and belonging. And to suggest that somebody who's neurodivergent doesn't know what belonging means, or somebody who's autistic or what have you, is, I think, wrong, because we just have a different perception of time and space,
right,
right? In terms of
right,
how we process and how we show up. But belonging and having that confidence, um, that has to be so rewarding for you as a mom, even just to
absolutely.
see this young man blooming and coming into himself.
Absolutely, of course, yes, and I want that for everybody, to the best of your ability, right? To the best that you can. And loneliness and autism is a very very much a pain point, and it's a pain point because autistic people's brains do work differently, and maybe they don't understand social interaction, communication, that it's a two-way street, nonverbal
Yeah.
communication, social cues, all these things that they struggle with, that
Yes.
they need practice at, oftentimes they don't get. And
Hmm.
so if you don't get it, then you don't learn it. And if you don't learn it,
That's right.
going to the grocery store twice a week to say hi, everybody, it's how you learn social interactions. And then that does help stave off loneliness, right? So
Yeah.
we're all connected in that way.
Your patience and your grace in this journey, I think, is such a powerful um, element. Other than the mother's love that we all know and love, what drives you to be that way, to be as accepting, to be as loving, to you've got a really 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 deep sense of empathy to you.
I think autism, I mean, if there could be one gift of autism for parents, which, I mean, parents hate to think that it's a gift because it's so challenging, but the one gift of it is that you learn to not sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, I love
Truly,
it.
right?
Yep.
You are not caring about, once your kid has thrown his body on the floor at Target, you're out of, F's to give, as they say, right? And so you
Yeah.
really learn what's important. You learn to be grateful for the minutes that you have that are not thought of autism. Any little advantage, any little inch stone, they call them inch stone of success, even if you just get through the day, you learn to be appreciative of that, and that makes you a better person.
It does. But I think, I think we also come with the programming that allows us to either be or not be a good person. I have met
Yeah.
a number of parents who are impatient and intolerant of their children's diagnosis. There are parents who are ashamed of it. And
Yeah.
so I think that speaks to you as a person and your resilience. And so, because we create these generational legacies that we leave behind based off of who we are and where we've come from. I would love to hear a little bit more about you and where you've come from that has lent to this enormous amount of resilience that is providing this space for people to grow, learn, and thrive.
That's very, thank you. I appreciate that. That's quite kind of you to say. And something I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into, but I guess sense of self, maybe
Mm.
knowing myself. And I have this mantra that I told you about my friend that I have a podcast with the refrigerator mom, Juliana. She was always quoting me back to me. Don't compare, don't compete is my mantra. It is something that I developed very early in life. And I think don't compare, don't compete is what allows you to be the best person you can be and not worry how you stack up to others and not be ashamed of that diagnosis and not be stuck on progress, stuck on milestones, ticking off boxes that they've done this, they haven't done that, right? Or even comparing one child to the other child. So
Mm.
I don't compare, don't compete is probably my overarching. Sometimes you have to tell yourself that every day. Sometimes you have to tell
Yeah.
yourself that every hour because
Yeah.
self acceptance is a practice. It's not something. It's not one and done, is it? Right?
No, no. It's interesting because, Kelley, this conversation is very timely as well, because here on the Unbreakable podcast, what we do with people who have really neat tools is we pilot them. We have something called the Unbreakable Practice Lab. And right now we've just launched the first practice lab, and it is really cool. So there's a founder here in the Calgary area. His name is Dale Light, and he has developed a tool called William Tells All. And what it is it's a web-based application, and you record your own affirmations and you place them over binaural beats and you listen to them. And he's got reams and reams of studies that show that it actually helps with, neural pathways and lighting them up. And, if you were to look through Unbreakable section 3 is called The Science of How We Rise. And it's all psychology, neurology, and the resiliency, the pillars of resiliency, which are problem solving, empathy, emotional regulation, and self-confidence. And what we've done is we've pulled together a cohort of, I think, about 13 different people who have different walks of life. Our youngest participant is 12.
Oh,
And and she's, I mean, at first she was like, I really don't like listening to my own voice. And, what I've said is, you listen to your own voice. That's full self-acceptance, because radical self-acceptance is hearing your voice. And as a podcaster, I'm sure you know this. At first, we're kind of like, ugh, that's how I
right.
sound. And then, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I droned on for so long. And then, we can be so critical of ourselves.
Oh
But
gosh.
what's really interesting is we have people who are in the practice lab, and they are, so we have a 12-year-old, and then we have a 47-year-old. We have several athletes. We have a transformation competitive bodybuilder. We have we have two female football players who are both participating in national tournaments in the next couple of weeks. We
Wow.
have other bodybuilders like myself and one of my other friends. And then we just have lifestyle people who are just looking to improve themselves. We have one fellow who, we're seeing really great results from him. He's struggled with depression, and he has a stutter, and he's someone I've known for several years, and I really I love him dearly. He's a wonderful friend. And what we're starting to see is people are already finding positive outcomes from that because of the things that we tell ourselves. So for you, your mantra of how you show up and what you tell yourself, what happens is it actually programs your reticular activating system. And that actually manages your sleep and wake cycles, but it also validates everything that you think about. So what happens, say you wake up and you're like, man, it's rainy, it's cold, it's windy, I'm tired. Well, you've just set the tone for your entire day. Your reticular activating system is now filtering out everything that doesn't validate rainy, tired, cold. And so the William Tell practice is actually starting to enhance our internal dialogue. And what we're
Mm.
finding is people are leveling up. They're coming to a new level. They're seeing themselves differently. Our one fellow who wouldn't have stood up for himself if he had steel in his spine, had a minor back pinch at the gym over the weekend, and he took a day or two off, and he went in yesterday and he said, this is what I can do, and this is what I can't do, and this is what I won't do.
Mm.
And he told me that, and I was like, I've worked with
That's
this individual for years in a mental health capacity, and I was like, who the heck are you? This is amazing. He would never have done that before. So
that's awesome.
these brain hacking theories and things like that are one thing, but then you have this beautiful science, and if you were to marry those two things together, I think it's lights out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And with my son over the years, and sometimes all we had was one or two words. We had to get the point across in one or two words because that was all of the language that he had. And it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing how much you can pack into a word, right? With intention and with
Yeah.
you know very
Well, and
specific goals.
yeah, and so one of the questions I have particularly is about emotional regulation, because I know the agitation or the anxiety or the frustration of not being heard, seen, understood when they are trying to articulate. I mean, that has to have been something that was a real challenge. So now that he's articulating and articulating more, do you notice a difference in his emotional regulation?
Yes, that's probably been the biggest thing is that, and listen, we worked for years on hacks for emotional regulation, on little tools, on little things that he could do when he was spiraling out of control, right?
Right.
Breathing exercises, and there's something called the zones of regulation to, as a, you associate a color with a feeling
Yes.
so that in the moment where you have no words, you can just
Red.
scream the word red so that we will
Yeah.
know that
Yeah.
we don't want to make you do anything when you're angry, right? We don't want to make you do anything when you're sad. So if you tell us that you're sad, then maybe let's just take the afternoon off, right? But if you can't tell us you're sad, then we're going to go about our day assuming that you're with the
You're
program.
good.
So
Yeah.
we have all of these things that we've developed. We had this thing called that we took us years, big problem, small problem, where we would label problems because again, he was a very rigid thinker and his calendar and his schedule was everything in life is going to life. And
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to adhere to the calendar. Something's going to happen. Is it a big problem or small problem? And it was a way of naming kind of an abstract thing. What's a big problem to me might not be a big problem to you, that kind of thing. And they were all of those words were in there, all of those tools and hacks were in there, but they weren't necessarily translating to everyday life. And now
Mm.
he's in a calmer space, and he's coupled with maturing. He's just maturing in general, as we all do,
True.
right?
Yeah.
And we are able to discuss and learn a lot more about the things that are triggers for his regulation. And once you know the trigger, then you can avoid the trigger, or you can learn a positive coping mechanism for the trigger. It's a lifelong process, right? And for all of us,
Absolutely.
but
Yes.
especially for him. But yes, that is, and we have learned that big problem, small problem. We didn't waste our time all those years of trying to learn a framework, big problem, small problem, because he's got it. He understands it now, and now we can talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's just that we weren't getting as far as we could have with
Right.
that early on, but it was in there and it's still in there. So my advice to parents is keep going, even if you think that it's not working. It's people these days have a tendency to be impatient, right? It's
I
not a
agree.
2-year process. It's not a 4-year process. It's a 18, 20-year process maybe, and that's nobody wants to hear. And I wish I could make it go faster too, but life's a journey.
Yeah. It is. And, I ask that because, with my Special Olympian, that is her, I mean, she's a golfer and man, she is lights out. She had a tournament here local 2 weeks ago, and it was her second tournament. And her first tournament, we got her in, and her first 9 was just fantastic. The second 9 just ate her lunch and she had a complete meltdown. And day 2 of the tournament it was awful. And she felt terrible. But, what was really interesting was when we had our session the following week after that tournament, we did a debrief with her family. And then, we had our session, and she said, My first 9 was so good. I would never have been that good if we weren't working together and I didn't have my tools. And I
Uh,
thought, okay, so she's looking for that silver lining to see where she's gone really good. And I
yeah,
love that because that's where we start to see change going forward, is being
right.
able to acknowledge the effort that we put into it. And then, one of the first things that I taught her was hit the pause button. Just
Mm,
hit the pause button. When you feel angry, hit the pause button. You know what that looks like. You know what that feels like. And I actually went out and I bought one of those recordable buttons, like an easy button, like Staples used to have.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I recorded my voice on it. Well, but first, Kelley, I bedazzled it pink because that's my favorite color. So I spent a night and a half bedazzling this thing. And I am not an artist in that way, but and it was interesting. They included, like, in the kit, they include this little white pencil, and I was like, oh, that must be for sketching. No, it's actually for lifting the gems up. I did it the hard way. So that's fine. It's fine. We got it done. So on there, I actually recorded my voice at first, and I said to her, I'm so proud of you for hitting the pause button. You
Oh,
stopped the hijack. So immediately that positive reinforcement of you did it. And
yeah.
so what that does is it starts to disarm that amygdala to say, "Oh, I'm good. I'm not a bad girl for pushing this button and losing my cool."
That's a
Wow,
positive coping mechanism right there. Pushing
it
the pause button
is.
is positive. Yeah, of course. It's
It
all about
is.
hacks for these things, right?
It is. It is. But what was interesting was we had the pause button, then we had the belief button. And so the belief button is her recording her voice, talking about how good she is, how hard she's practiced, the things that she's done. And we went down even further and we took a golf ball and we spray painted it red. And I said, we're going to give this a nickname for now, and it's going to be anger. So if you look at her and you say, stop it, she howls. You break the hijack because the air quotes remind her of a time when it was good. And from there, she named it. She's a really big F1 fan. And
Uh-huh.
so she named it Max, which is like her least favorite F1. And she's like, I never want to see him. And I was like, well, then I guess you better not get angry. And, so we came up with this, but then I created the accountability for her to teach her family how to use these tools because I wanted her to own it. She's 23. I don't need to articulate on her behalf. She's very smart. She's graduated high school. She has a job. She's a wonderful human being. She just happens to have some special needs. And
Mm,
so we wrote out a cue card for her to be able to train her mom and dad. Her dad's her caddy. And actually that was one of the first things we had to deal with, was that she was sometimes very, very snarky and
mm,
mean to her
mhm,
caddy. So we went
mm.
out and we bought him a different hat. We talked about the fact that we all wear different hats in our day to
Oh, yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And I said to her, when you go to the golf course, do you wear your salon hat? No. Oh, then why do you expect your caddy to wear your dad hat? Oh, right.
Mm,
So I think the other component here is the tools meet somebody where they are, right?
sure.
And so, like, talk a little bit about some of the tools that you tried and have had to abandon because they just weren't effective.
Anything about food. A lot of
Mm,
times autistic people are very motivated by food. So food is can be, but we had fixations about food, so that was never a good motivator. So I had to get away from that. Um, Too much language,
mm,
breathing exercises. He was never really into breathing exercises, right?
yeah.
So that's a big thing too. But he didn't love that. I've noticed that he's starting to do some of them on his own. So, but at home they just used to frustrate him. So I stopped the breathing exercises because that just wasn't his thing. Um, and just basically not giving him enough time, like having to be on a schedule. He wanted
Yeah.
a calendar, he wanted a schedule, but to be flexible in that schedule was really important because more than anything, he needed time to process things, right? So if the schedule had to change, if I would have to give him some time to sit with it, and eventually he would come around, but I couldn't be in too big a hurry, right? And
Hmm.
that was probably the biggest lesson for my son. And I think any person, anybody really, but particularly for autistic people, they need time to process a change, the time to process things, right? Things sometimes
Hmm.
aren't going as fast for them, or maybe they're going too fast in one part of their mind and not fast enough
Yeah.
in another part of their mind. um, we've learned a lot in the last couple years because he is speaking more about social anxiety. So he has a lot of social anxiety, which I never knew because he's very gregarious. He he wants to see if he walked in the room right now, he would ask you your name and that'd be great. But then he would be so nervous if the conversation got over his head. So I have had to really rein in some of the activities because I know they have to be short bursts because there's a lot more social anxiety than I ever realized there was. I've had to rein in birthdays, big celebrations because it's just too much. Too many people, it's too much. It's too overwhelming. It's too much social anxiety.
Yeah, that's interesting. And not at all surprising either,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm a fairly isolated person and I'm neurotypical,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, us ladies from the 80s, I don't know that we didn't get the attention. And I guess that's the other thing too, is that, there is a lot of attention on neurological health, on neurotypical versus neurodivergent. That's something that actually my producer and my chief of staff, Megan, want to talk about. They want to talk about those differences and
Yeah.
how we see and perceive the world.
Right.
And I think it's
I
powerful.
encourage everybody to not lose sight of the fact that it's communication, effective communication. So you touched on earlier when you have to meet somebody where they are, and that is absolutely true. What that means is, how does this person communicate? What language, what verbal, nonverbal language does this person respond to? Because if I'm talking about something that they're not getting, maybe I need to not talk. Maybe I need to just sit and look and what is my face saying that my language, it doesn't match what my language is saying. And so it's all about effective communication, very direct language, and you'd be surprised how many of us get kind of confused by what that looks like and what that sounds like.
Absolutely. I mean, it's also concrete language. It's saying what you mean, right? You're not going to go and have a consulting type conversation with a person who is autistic. They are going to look at you and say, why did you say all those words? What is your point?
Yeah. So he's really good my son's really good on the phone. He's great with technology anyway, but the phone is a safe place for him. That's one of his positive coping mechanisms, is phone and FaceTime. So
That's great.
Has a lot of people he likes to call and have very short conversations with, because that's about where he is, short conversations. And, everybody's tickled pink for the most part when he calls, but it's sometimes inconvenient, and you can't drop everything to sit and have a conversation with him. So people will, what do I say? I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be, well, you're not being mean if you say, Bo, call me at Tuesday at 5 p.m. Bo, don't ever call me before 9 a.m. Bo, if you tell him when to call and when not to call, you're not hurting his feelings. You are giving him instructions. You're giving him information. You're giving him communication that he needs. And it's amazing how many people, but I feel bad. Don't, you're being, you're being helpful when you give him information. You're not being, you're not being mean. You're being direct, and that's what he needs, right? And that is, you'd be surprised how many people are put off by that, or I can't bring myself to do that. Well,
it's interesting because that's one of the things that I talk about with my Olympian a lot is, because a lot of her friends are also in Special Olympics. And so boundaries, we have a statement that we write in her journal probably once a month, give or take. And it is, boundaries are not being mean. Boundaries are healthy. And that's really what you're telling people, is create a boundary with him that you can live into and be consistent with that, because that's what he's going to expect. But it's a boundary. And what it sounds like is that when someone gives Bo a boundary, he leans in on that and he really values that structure to help him feel psychologically safe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and that's a tip for anyone that, interacts with people who are neurodivergent or who don't have a lot of language, is just be very direct, keep it very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so when you think about all of this journey, so Bo's treatment was a one-time thing? Do you have to go back again?
That's a great question. And so TMS and all of the protocols of TMS, accelerated TMS, they are a treatment course that you do over 6 weeks, or if you're doing an accelerated version, you're doing it, the same amount of treatments in less than 6 weeks. They're drug-free, they're non-invasive. You can do them as often as you want. generally insurance depends on your insurance carrier, but if you're doing it for depression, insurance will usually pay for it once every 6 months. And some people
Hmm.
require a touch up once every 6 months. Some people, for a couple of years, they're going to have a touch up every 6 months, and then maybe they'll be able to go a year, and then maybe they'll be able to go to 2 years. For my son, he did the full course of MERT when he was 22, and then about a year later, he did another 4 weeks, and he hasn't had to do it again.
Wow. And that was
So
4
that is
years.
him. Everybody's
Yeah,
different, but again, it's
totally.
drug-free and non-invasive. So, generally what the doctors say is if it's been longer than a year, you're probably going to need to do, and you feel like you're slipping, you feel like maybe you're not sleeping as well, maybe suicidal thoughts are coming back, or, these things happen, then you probably, if it's been more than a year, you're probably going to need to repeat the whole course. If it's been less than a year, you may be able to do a half course. My
Hmm.
my answer to people, sometimes I get a little frustrated because I feel like people are like, oh, so it's not permanent. No, when it comes to mental health, there is no cure. There is only
No.
management. It's a chronic
Yeah.
condition. Learn to manage the chronic condition, and if you're taking pills, you're taking pills for the rest of your life? Is that right? Or so you might need it again. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's my answer to it, to
Well,
everyone.
and I
But
think it's also like it's the choice to flourish versus languish. Like when we look at somebody who has a mental illness, there's a really great researcher out there. His name's Corey Keyes, and he has a model where he talks about the flourishing versus languishing model, and how somebody who has mental illness, whether that's PTSD, depression, all of those different type of diagnoses, um, you can flourish with those things. You don't, that it is not a death sentence,
right,
because your brain operates in a different way, right? And I completely agree with you that if you could take the cost of a medication or a copay out, and you could remove those toxins from your system. And I mean, I'm not, oh, big pharma is terrible, blah 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 blah. I mean, they kind of are in some cases, but that's not my rail here. My rail here is, if you don't need to tax your liver, if you don't need to tax your kidneys, why would you? Like,
right.
that physical whole health is super important, and if you could do something that reduces that impact, why wouldn't you?
Well, and then a lot of things, yeah, absolutely. And then a lot of the things, sometimes they describe TMS, the neurosurgeons who are so great. They describe, think of your brain as a cell phone, and think of the magnetic pulse, as a phone charger. So it is recharging your brain. And for some people who have had multiple concussions, or who have had a lot of trauma, that has a physical effect on your brain. It has a physiological effect on your brain. And so psychotherapy is great. Medication is great. Those are absolutely tools in your toolbox for better mental health. But if you have a physiological component of your brain care, you should address that too. Yeah, right?
My dogs were barking, sorry.
Oh, there.
Absolutely we should. Like, I think that the people think that they have health because maybe they go to the gym and they walk on the treadmill and they eat, some carrots and spinach and whatever. But whole health, you're not healthy if you're not mentally healthy. If you're not mentally well, doing the things that you can be doing to be your best full whole self.
And the brain is the engine that we run on. So get some brain care, because, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
This
one of the things I'm most proud of, and I see this with my son. We actually re-engaged speech therapy after he did treatment, because he was so interested in communication and talking again. But a lot of people that do TMS, people who have been in a deep depression for a very long time, they tell us that they start to really enjoy therapy. That a lot of times people who are in a very depressed state, or who are, like my son was, in a severely rigid state of being, progress is too slow on all of the great coaching and psychotherapy that they're doing, and so they don't have encouragement to stick with it. But if you take care of what is ailing your brain, and you are in a better place, and your brain is charged like your phone is charged, you start to see things you didn't
Mhm.
see, and you start to want to go to progress, and the self-actualization tools that make all of our lives so much more manageable start coming to you in greater speed, and then that begets more progress, right? Because the more you get to know yourself, the more you want to know about yourself. And
Absolutely.
TMS can help you start a
Mhm.
journey that you were too overwhelmed to begin before.
I think so. And I'm a masterclass subscriber. I really enjoy that platform, and they have a phenomenal unit on the brain, on neurology, and they've got these three wonderful female neuroscientists, and they get on this, and there's this one lady, and she consistently just refers to the brain as a 3-pound piece of meat that controls your whole existence. I'm like, it's such a gross way to put it, but it's just, I mean, when you think about it, that's really what it is. And it's also the one thing that I think people fail to remember, and I think this is what makes going down those paths as difficult as it is that the brain is a prediction machine. It sits inside of a closed skull and doesn't see or feel anything other than what your eyes process. And so if you've gone, I mean, in my book, there's actually a story about after my mother abandoned us, and we were in a counseling session with a counselor, and it was at our school. And for all intents and purposes, the gentleman was quite lovely. He was easy to get along with, and he was lovely. My sister and I were in a counseling session with him, and he had given us, those smelly Mr. Skechers markers that they used to
Uh-huh.
have.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who decided that giving kids markers to sniff was a good idea, but okay. And so I'm like 5 and my sister's 7, and we're sitting there and we're like, ha ha, we're having a grand old time. We're coloring and we're drawing these pictures and we're doing all this stuff. And he goes, okay, girls, it's time for us to put the markers away and it's time for us to talk. And we're doing our thing. And he goes, oh, he says, you guys aren't very good listeners. Maybe that's why your mom left. So you can well imagine, I didn't go to a psychologist to deal with being left on a couch at 4 years old until I was 31 years old. And I was 5 when that happened.
Wow.
That's a formative memory.
That is never leaving you.
Never. And so you think about the fact that that happened in the first 5 years of life, and our self-confidence is actually built between the age of 4 and 12. Whatever we have happen to us between 4 and 12, it either empowers us or disempowers us from a self-confidence perspective. Fun fact, you're the most confident when you're 60. 60. And
60. Okay. All right.
yeah. And so what happens though is that you think about just that in terms of the prediction of what my brain is going to tell me when I walk into the psychologist's office at 31 years old after living a really, really horrible, uncomfortable, psychologically unsafe relationship where I'm trying to get a need met that is not being met. And the fear that I felt and the anxiety about going into that was born out of the fact that the last time I experienced something like that, I was told that I was the problem. Right? And so the brain as a prediction machine is just saying, yep, you should feel nervous. You should be sweating. You should be uncomfortable that this person's going to tell you you're just not a very good person. You deserved what you got in that relationship, right? And it's people don't equate those things. They don't think about them.
Right. Oh gosh. Wow.
Wow. So it is, it's a neuroplasticity thing, and it sits inside of there. And so when we think about something that didn't work, that you put a lot of effort into, that, maybe, or had a painful experience with somebody or something, the next time something happens like that, your brain is going to have a specific reaction, which is going to indicate your body should go into fight or flight mode. And then from fight or flight mode, well, then it becomes a decision. And if it's, I'm going to move through this and I'm going to just go against that, you're reprogramming your brain every single time you go against something that makes you uncomfortable. Like my wife is, she was born and raised best buds with her mom, very, very devout Catholic family upbringing. And she was shy as can be, like to the point, like she was one of those little kids who hid behind her mom's pants, right? And so you know what her mom did? Her mom put her in every sport imaginable, and it's a good thing that she did, because now, I mean, I'll always brag about her. She's a 2-time silver medalist with Team Canada in women's tackle football, right? So, I mean, that's exceptional. And fundamentally, she believes that we do the things that scare us, and that's how we kill our anxiety. Action kills anxiety.
It's true. Yeah, you can acknowledge it and not let it stop you, right? I mean, I'm a perfect example of that. I'm sitting here. I don't have any, I'm not a doctor. I don't have any experience in psychiatry or neurology. Certainly no neuroscience, but no one else is talking about this treatment. So here I go.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it because nobody else is doing it and somebody should tell you about it. That's my whole attitude.
Yep. And I have a really good friend who's a neurosurgeon. I would love for her. She's in Australia, actually. She's Canadian living in Australia. We met on a plane. I meet a lot of people. Kelley, I mean, we have a saying in our family, strangers are just friends we haven't met yet. Canadians are golden retrievers. Right. And, it's funny, actually. I was at a comedy club. A client of mine took me out to the Gotham Comedy Club in New York City, down in Manhattan there. And our girls were off at, I think it was like the Jonas Brothers or something in the garden. And I was like, I'm sorry, you want me to send my 14-year-old alone in there? And she was like, it's the safest place in New York City right now. And I'm like, okay, cool. So we go into this Gotham nightclub and, they have, all these guys up there, they're doing their bits and whatever. I go to the restroom and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Jerry Seinfeld. And I come back from the restroom. He is on the stage doing a set. And so he does like a little bit and then he's like, okay, let's just do some Q&A. Anybody got any questions for me? And we're all like, crickets. No, we don't. And this guy in like the mid front row, and Gotham is very, very, very intimate. And he goes, hey, Jerry, I'm from Canada. You want to come and have a drink with me? I'm from Toronto. I'm like, yeah, that's America's hat. Like, come to the West. And he goes, no, I don't want to have a drink with you. And then he looks at the crowd and he goes, Canadians, the golden retrievers of the world. And I'm like, hey, it's the truth. It's the truth.
That is nothing to be ashamed of. I love all dogs, though. I love all dogs.
Yes.
I mean, who doesn't want to be a golden? I'd kill to be a golden retriever.
Amen to that. Okay, so before we wind down here, one of the things that I would love to hear a little bit more about is I'd love to hear a little bit more about the business, the Brain Performance Technologies. And I'd also love to hear about your podcast, Refrigerator Moms. Let's give some folks something to click into.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Brain Performance Technologies is a medical service organization. So if you are looking for transcranial magnetic stimulation, we offer several of the protocols for transcranial magnetic stimulation, and they are prescribed through some of our doctors. We have partner doctors. The doctor that treated my son, he was lovely, and I called him and I was so grateful for, the success that the treatment was for my son. And I said, is there anything I can do to help you? And he said, well, maybe you could talk to some moms. I'm not really good talking to the moms. And so it was going to be, I was just going to, be an advocate for the treatment. And then one thing led to another. And my husband said, what can I do for you? And he said, do you know anything about taxes? And so one day he said, I just want to be a doctor. I don't want to do marketing. I don't want to do payroll. And so that is what Brain Performance Technologies became. It became a service organization for his practice, and we have interventional psychiatry practices that we represent. Incredible. And we make it easy for them to practice medicine but specifically TMS and all TMS protocols, and not worry about all of the stuff that goes into that. So if you are a doctor or a patient, you can look up Brain Performance Technologies and give us a call. We have 3 clinics. We have one in San Jose, one in Sacramento, and one in Las Vegas. But you can open a division of Brain Performance Technologies wherever you want to bring TMS to your practice. So that's Brain Performance Technologies. And Refrigerator Moms is a podcast. And what happened was, I have a dear friend who also has an autistic son who's in his 20s. We have been friends for over 20 years, and we have been navigating autism together for a very long time, long before social media, was a thing. And just have a good old-fashioned friendship that has autism in common, but that it would exist with or without autism, right? So we're really good friends, but she's an editor by trade. So she was helping me edit the website for Brain Performance Technologies. And a mom was in the clinic because her daughter had been diagnosed in college with autism, and she was doing treatment. And she came in to introduce herself, and she was in a really bad way. How could I have missed this? I thought that she was just quirky, and she was racked with guilt and all of the things that a mom goes through. And we sat with her for a long time, and gave her the tour of Autism 101, and she left, and we decided we needed to do something and be a resource, the big sisters for people who are navigating autism and neurodivergent parenting. And the Refrigerator Moms was born. And the Refrigerator Moms was our cheeky nod to the refrigerator mother theory that was the basis of early autism diagnoses, where it was thought that a mother caused autism by being a cold mother, by being a refrigerator mother. So if you were a cold mother, you were supposed to hug your child more or risk institutionalization of your child, which is what happened to a lot of moms who were just really advocating for it, who were fiercely going to see the doctor, wanting to find solutions for their child's inability to talk and all of their sensory needs of their children, and they were told it was their fault. So we decided that we should pay homage to them and turn the phrase on its ear. And so you can read we write papers, research papers. They're opinion pieces, but they're cited and researched on all topics of neurodivergence for parents that are up in the middle of the night, like I am, Googling, what do I do about OCD? What do I do about ARFID? What do I do about screen time? What do I do about, do I do ABA? Do I not do ABA? All of those questions that you have, we write a paper about it. And then in our podcast, we talk about the paper. And it is meant to give parents a sounding board from moms who have been there.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. And your listeners, they're kind of all over the place. They're all over North America kind of thing.
They're all over the place, and we get great questions. And you can find us at refrigeratormoms.com, and you can find us on all the social medias. And we weren't really social media people, but you start.
We are now.
Sure, yeah, they love us on the TikTok. It's a lot of work doing a podcast. I'm sure that I'm not telling you, anything you don't know. You some days I'm like, what have we done? But it's very worthwhile, and I love doing it. Of course, I love spending time with her, and I guess that is the joy of it being in your 50s, is that you get to do exactly what you want to do, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's the same thing with our podcast, right? It is a labor of love. We toggle back and forth between a banter and a guest and a banter and a guest. And, last week, I think we recorded one, it'll go live next week, and it went off the rails at the end. It was fun. I laughed so hard, I cried. And it's because we play these games. And so I mentioned to you this before. So I've got these little debatable cards. So we were doing Would You Rathers on the last one. And those are unhinged, those ones sometimes. So I do these with my team, and they love them. And so I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to give you a couple of options that you can pick from, and I'll give you mine, and we'll see if we have a debate or if we have an agreement. And in a lot of cases, we agree on a lot of things when I get this out there. Okay, I've been saving this one because you put this in front of Gen Z and they don't even know who it is. So the best narrator, Morgan Freeman or James Earl Jones?
Oh, that's a good one.
Isn't it?
I love Morgan Freeman. I can't, I'm gonna go with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah, this one's a tough one for me, but I also agree. Morgan Freeman, he sounds more reflective, I guess is what I would say.
Shawshank, right? I mean,
yes.
It's just, I will always have Shawshank in my. Shawshank is, in my opinion, one of the greatest movies of all time. Shawshank Redemption, and his narration to that movie solidified that answer for me.
Yes, we actually just finished Shawshanking a whole bunch of garbage out of our garage because I didn't want to pay for a bin this spring, and then had a flood and had to pay for a bin. And so what we were doing, and actually it wasn't me, it was my wife Erin. She would take stuff, and she was like, "So I'm Shawshanking," and I was like, "I don't know what you're like. What are you talking about?" She's like, "I'm just putting a little bit of trash extra in our trash bin." So she got rid of a microwave. She got rid of car seats. She got rid of paintbrush. It was crazy, the stuff that was non-recyclable that she was putting in there. So she was Shawshanking our trash, which I thought was hilarious. I'm like, well, we do pay for the service. So, okay, this is a good one.
All right.
How should silverware be put in the dishwasher? Handles up or nope down?
The eternal debate, right? The eternal debate. I am up because I feel like it's going to get clean if it's up.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
See, my concern is does everybody wash their hands before emptying the dishwasher? And so I tend to be
Damn, that's my
down.
husband. Well, my
Mm,
husband tells me is that it depends on where the water's shooting out. So if the water's on, because sometimes it's on the spinner's on the top, right? The water's shooting out the
yep.
top, and sometimes it's on the bottom. So I guess if it's on the
Mm,
bottom, you should put it upside down so that
I
that
think
way
so.
most
So I guess
water.
this one's a draw then, because
Yeah,
it depends on your machine.
fair.
Also, I do not load the dishwasher. I'm not allowed, and if I do, it gets redone. I'm the one who loads it like a methed out raccoon, where I'm just like, okay, let's just get it in there, right?
Yeah, just to get it done. I have a tendency to want to just cross it off my list of things to do. My husband is like
Correct.
more serious about it than I am.
Yes. Good. So we have so much in common, Kelley.
Yeah,
I
we
like
do
this. Okay, the next one. What is the correct way to cut a sandwich? Diagonally or vertically?
diagonally.
100%.
I,
Agreed.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just cuter. Then you get
It
that
is.
one little, you get that first bite, that's the perfect little bite
Perfect.
there. I
Yes.
mean, anything you can make a triangle out of.
Why not? The
Yeah,
world doesn't have enough triangles.
no, yeah, absolutely. It's fancier.
It is. It's very fancy. It's like high tea fancy. They're all in triangles. That has to tell you something.
Right?
Okay. Greeting cards, a thoughtful expression, or throwing away money?
Throwing away money.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's throwing away money. You can write. So it's all about what you have to say. So
Yes.
you can have a very simple blank card. You can have a piece of paper, but if you nail the sentiment, I'm
Done.
happier than if you have spent 10 minutes reading what somebody else has to say. Yeah, or
Ah.
figuring out what somebody else has to say.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
want to
And
hear
you
what you
know,
have
the
to say.
ones they have like, look at this. So my nephew is getting married in a couple of months, and for their for their reception, they have said, please don't buy us cards. But in fact, what we would like is for you to put a recipe together so that we can cook it together. And they've given you a recipe card with what it is, how long it takes, what the ingredients are, cook time and prep time, and then directions on the back.
Oh my, that is I have a lot of nieces that are getting married. I'm gonna steal that idea. That's
It's
fantastic.
so good. So, and the thing is like you could put it like if you wanted to give them a little nest egg cash and, you go and you tuck it in with your little recipe
Yeah.
card. But how cute is that? And it literally says on here, um, it's like, you're traveling across the way. And then instead of a guest book and instead of cards, give us a recipe card. And
I
that's how
love
this is their guest book.
you people from Calgary. You have got it right
No, well, they're in PEI, but I'll take it. Okay. Okay, this is the last one. And this
Okay.
is one, oh man, this is a gooder. The Better Sick Day Show. The Price is Right or The Golden Girls?
Oh, the Golden Girls. I am a fan of the Golden Girls. I will drop everything for the Golden Girls. I marathons of Golden Girls that are
Love it.
yeah.
I know. I'm fairly certain that I'm a healthy mix of all of them kind of put together. If you were one Golden Girl, who would you be?
Dorothy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's she's my jam. I know I love them all. I mean, you gotta love them all.
You do. You do. I mean, I've got a stern face of Dorothy, the sass of Sophia, the genuine authenticity of Rose,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's a little Blanche in there too. Let's be honest.
We should all have a little. The world would be a better place if we all had a little Blanche in us.
I agree. I agree. That's amazing. Kelley, this has been such a great conversation. I am so excited. I'm like, maybe I'll just come down. I don't want to find somebody in Canada. I'm going to come down and do some medical tourism. Come see
Come on down. We'd love to have you. You can do the accelerated version. We have people come from far and wide, particularly for autism, but for any condition. The accelerated protocols. If you're listening to this and if you're struggling with suicidal ideation, do it. Don't hesitate. Get it done because it is very, very effective at managing
Yeah.
suicidal ideation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all things considered, this was a fantastic conversation. We've covered so much ground in the past hour. If you were to leave people, the population, with one final thought, what would that be?
TMS is not experimental. It is not alternative medicine. It is established medicine. It is just underutilized. So don't let that stop you, because don't underutilize it because your doctor doesn't know about it. Don't underutilize it because only 1% of doctors are talking about it. Do some research. It will not take you long to be as shocked as I was to find that this is a valid medical intervention. Look into it, talk to a doctor that prescribes it, and something new that is there for you, that is not experimental and it is not alternative.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, listeners, we're going to drop Kelley's information in the show notes for you, so you'll be able to follow up on Refrigerator Moms if that's what you want to do. But we do want to give you the information for the clinic so you can check it out, check this technology out. And remember, protect your peace, chase your dreams, and stay unbreakable.